Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name's Simon Hodgkins. Delighted to be joined by John Murray. You're very welcome to the podcast. John, you're joining us from a remote location today. So let's start by asking you to introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and your career, and maybe a little bit about what you're involved in, because you're out and about today. So over to you, John.
I'm John Murray, and I'm a headshot photographer specializing in mixing behavioral science and photography together. I shoot people in space for a living. At the moment, I'm sitting in my car in Howth, surrounded by people eating fish and chips and feeding seagulls, because I'm in the middle of building a kayak with my dad and a friend. And my background, a bit of a wide and diverse background. I kind of originally went to college to study finance, and that was my mom's great idea that I would work in a bank somewhere, and it was nice and safe. I kind of worked a lot of different jobs and things. I worked in bars. I was in the emergency services for a while. Now look, my photography career grew out of a hobby that kind of turned into what it is now, and through many transitions as well, like fashion work and magazine work into headshots, and then into mixing the behavioral science together because it kind of made sense. It seemed like good fun, and I like to over-engineer my whole life. I could have bought a kayak. Not that I don't have enough already, but no, build one. Splinters and glue. So I'm probably quite high doing this on fumes, but I'm sure we'll get there.
So what kind of kayak are you building, John? Let's cover that first, because building a kayak is no mean feat. Howth, for our international viewers, is a beautiful scenic little place. It's on the coast in Dublin. It's a fantastic spot, but you're knee deep in building a kayak. So what kind of kayak is it?
This is not going to make sense to anybody other than kayakers. It's a Greenlandic style of East Greenland kayak. So it's extremely long. It's 19 foot long, which is 5 meters 75 or 5 meters 80 to people who are in new money and old money. And it's only 17.5 inches wide, so it's like a razor blade, and it's really, really low on the water because, not to put a grim spin on it, but Inuits used to kill seals for food and for their supplies and sustenance and stuff. Seal hunting was their Tesco's, and they used to pull them flat onto the back deck. So the back deck is really, really low because they couldn't be humping a dead seal up onto a high deck. So the back deck is really low. Nowadays, people don't use them for clubbing seals. The kayakers tend to use them for rolling and kind of competition rolling and stuff like that. So the boat goes over easier and you can do more fancy tricks in it. It is the BMX of kayaks, only a really long BMX, and it floats in water.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like there's been a lot of research gone into this.
Well, it's 1,000 years worth of kayak design from the Inuits, and then 3 gobshites in Howth with some glue and some wood and some fiberglass and a few ropes, and yeah, it's all going together. It's taken 2 weeks so far. Every time glue goes onto the boat, it takes a day to dry, and you can't do anything in. It's literally like watching paint dry, and then you have to come back to it the next day. So at the moment, I'm going around burning the candle at both ends because I might be in the studio from 7 o'clock in the morning to like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock or something. I'm coming out the house, I'm doing some stuff, I'm back into the studio for the afternoon, and then I'm back out here doing more stuff. So I'm not exactly doing a lot for the environment on the diesel fumes, but this week is kind of an exception to the normal rules.
So look, that's great. Let's move on a little bit then, because let's get into the photography, because you've got a studio in the city centre, if I'm not mistaken. It's you've been in this game for what, 10, 12, 13 years at this stage?
Yeah. It's depressing to say that you've been in something for more than 10 or 15 years and realise you're an adult when you started, right? I've been taking photographs since probably 2004, 2003. And then it kind of developed. Actually, no, it was a bit later than that. Probably 2004, 2005. And then I've kind of, that developed as a hobby, and it kind of turned into a business. And I've been shooting headshots now. I actually trained as a top headshot photographer in the world in 2014. So almost 10 years ago, which is still depressing to say. so long ago.
And John,
Um,
can I ask you something though? Because you're very much into almost the psychology of photography and understanding this
mm,
human behavioral science,
yeah,
which for sort of the casual observer looking in, you kind of say, what's that got to do with photography? But you're kind of really into getting into this substance over the superficial, right? So could you maybe
yes.
expand on that a bit for our audience? Because particularly in the headshot, where in today's online, digitally connected, hyper fast world, your image really does represent you in lots of different places. Could you maybe expand a bit on your thoughts on that process?
How long have we got? Just about 2 hours on that one answer. Especially the way I talk, I never shut up. But the right, so the essentially everything that we are on the inside, we wear on the outside. If you're happy, you look happy. If you're sad, you look sad. If you're stressed, you look stressed, right? So people kind of assume that headshots and having a headshot on your website, your LinkedIn page, and all that sort of stuff is marketing, or it's like it's a digital branding thing, but it's not. It's like we've been squishy things for millions of years, and for about 90 million years, we've stood face to face with other squishy things like ourselves, right? And we make sure that they're not going to attack us. And about 2 million years ago, we got the facility for empathy. So empathy comes from two Greek words, em and pathos, which means in feeling. So I am in feeling with you, and internally I'm feeling you. So we move the same muscles in the same way as people we stand in front of. Now, for 90 million years, we could see each other. And then 200 years ago, somebody invented the camera. And then 180 years ago, the glass-based mirror was invented. But what we should be doing and what we should understand is that when we see any image of a person, as far as our brain is concerned, that's an actual person standing in front of us. So we need to feel them. We need to trust them. We need to feel connected to them. And that's one of the important things that makes the science with it. So people tell me all the time, I look at your website and you kind of look at the pictures, you kind of feel like you know the person in the picture. Like there's something about them that you feel like you know. And that is one of the main reasons of mixing the sciences with it, because when you look at them, what happens is that your brain is connected to that person on an emotional level, like through their body movements, through their head movements, through their facial expressions, and they have to be genuine reactive expressions. As we see in photographs all the time, these like sister-in-law smiles. I like to call it the seat sniffer on a bus smile. Like they look weird, and the smiles that happen when we pull the face disingenuously. So we think I'm standing in front of the camera smile his mouth, I'll move my mouth, and then you move your mouth, and none of the rest of you says I am happy, or none of the rest of you says anything other than the fact that I'm pulling a fake smile, which is usually why people hate themselves in photographs in the first place. Because their brain is saying that person looks uncomfortable, that person is uncomfortable, you should feel the same as that person, which is that empathy piece again. And for me, it's important that people understand everything about themselves, why they look that way, why they move that way. So we spend just as much time standing in front of the screen in the studio than we do actually look with the person standing in front of the camera having a photograph taken, because we're studying the movements and we're studying everything that they do, and that's where all of the kind of important stuff happens, because then they're connected to themselves in a different way than they were before they walked to the studio. And we all have the right to feel happy and confident and comfortable in our own skin. So it's important for me that when people leave the studio, they feel better about themselves than they did walking in, because usually walking in, they feel like absolute crap because they're going to have their photographs taken. It's uncomfortable. We're going to see that thing on our face that we don't like in photographs. We're going to go looking at it again. And if we can strip all that back and we can hit the reset button, then it's important, I think that was
Thanks.
the answer to your
Yeah,
question.
yeah. Thanks for explaining that, because it's interesting, because we kind of get caught up in today's digital world. But when you start talking about, the past and how photography is only a few hundred years old, and you kind of start to really put it into that context and that meaning of it. Now, I know you shoot a lot of really interesting people and famous people, and I know your work takes you all over the world. But what do you love about it, John? Because you must love it, because you've been doing it so long. You're well regarded. Everybody knows you. And people will go out of their way to get you to shoot them. But what do you love about it still?
Like a multitude of things. I don't think there's one thing that really stands out, but I'm nosy, inherently nosy. I just like, I love people. I love listening to people's stories. I love having conversations with people about things I know nothing about. Not because it makes me feel dumb or anything, because I don't know what they're talking about. But there are things that I learn about different people. Like, I had a conversation with a vet in the studio one day. She's essentially the most expensive AI man in the whole world. She lives like an AI as in artificial insemination, not as in AI as in the new AI. So like, she lives in the Saudi states and she inseminates racehorses that are worth more than this whole village of hosts together. And I remember having a conversation with her about dogs. Now, she works with horses, but dogs have developed the ability to move their frontalis muscles and their eyebrows, like, so that they can emote the same as people, so they can visually communicate with us and empathize with us, and we can empathize with them. That's puppy dog eyes, right? Real thing. But foxes and wolves can't do that because they haven't been domesticated in the same way, so they haven't learned to do that because they haven't learned it from us. So I had this conversation with her and casually asked her if horses had lateral canthus tendons, the ones that we use to smile, to get a Duchenne smile. And she laughed at me in my face and told me, I haven't been at that end of a horse in about 15 years. And moments like that are gold. Like, I'm having this conversation with you, like, this is real. And then you get the emotional moments as well, where people come into the studio and they really hate themselves in photographs, and then they see themselves for the first time properly. No distortion, no kind of weird lens stuff going on, no horrible lighting, no fake smiles. They get to see them. And a lot of it's like, oh my God, I do look like my dad, or I look like my mom, or I do look like my granny. And those moments can turn emotional as well, like really emotional. There's, like, I have a blog post on my website that says, I make people cry for a living and I love it. And it's actually true. Because, like, sometimes it's crying from stress, and then sometimes it's crying from the relief, or it's crying because they're connected to themselves in a way they haven't been before. And it's not just them crying. Like, my eyes to be sweating in that studio. Like, it happens a lot. And those moments are amazing. And then it's just the sheer joy that happens in the studio. Like, I have the laughing section on my website. Like, we're genuinely laughing together. Like, and I laugh with nearly everybody that walks into the studio to a ridiculous level, which is cool. But it's all of those things all combined, and it's people's stories, and it's people opening themselves up as well to not only the experience. It kind of turns into a confession box in the studio sometimes, and people tell you all sorts of things about their life, and they might be going through terribly for PTSD or any of those sort of things, or they've really struggled with self-image for a long time, and now taking brave steps to kind of appreciate themselves as they are. Actually, the girl in the studio not long ago, it's the second time being in the studio, and she told me that she was at her heaviest when she booked in the first time. A lot of people are like, right, I'm going to lose 2 stone, then I'll come in. But she went, no. Now, she should know. She's a life coach, and she deals with this sort of stuff and teaches people these kind of coping mechanisms. And she said, you know what? I need to like myself now as I am before I can make changes. Like, I can't be constantly chasing changes, because I'm never going to like myself as I am until I start appreciating myself as I am now and accepting myself as I am now. So she did. She came in, and I think she lost 6 stone after she was in the studio. And then she came back in again only 3 weeks ago. And that was a big thing, where she stood in front of me the first time and hadn't said anything about that the first time. But this time she did. She said, I came in here to appreciate myself for the first time. And when I appreciated myself and I was comfortable in my own skin because of what we did in here, I knew right now I'm ready to make changes. And that was massive. And that's another one of those kind of wild moments that happen in the studio every day that, I don't know, it makes the whole thing magical,
Well, John,
And when I look on LinkedIn, like, I stroll through my LinkedIn feed and I'm just constantly reminded of moments where I was laughing in the studio with people. Like, it's a constant reminder. Like, I'm going on, I did that, I did that, I did that, I did that. He was cool, I did that, I did that. my whole LinkedIn feed is just full of people with headshots that I've taken. Like some of my friends are like send me pictures when they see them as well. Like they're like, oh my god, John Murray headshots in the wild. And it's like you constantly see them in ads, you see them all over the place, and it's like it's nice to. They're all positive reminders of what I do for a living, you know.
Well, John, I was going to say that brings me nicely onto something else that I want to ask you before we run out of time today, and that's about these wellness talks.
Yeah.
Because I know that's another area, and it's kind of a little bit related to what you were just touching on there. But could you just expand on that as well for me?
Yeah, the whole lot is intertwined because, like, when I stand on stage, I might be talking about personal brand, but right, I'll talk about the branding and the images and stuff like that. But I switch it back into how we relate to ourselves. Like, all of it comes back to how we relate to ourselves. Like, we have this gap between how we see ourselves and what we think the rest of the world sees, and a gap between who we think we are and who we think the rest of the world expects us to be. So, like, societal self-image as well as physical self-image. And if we stop and we look back at it and we try and dissect how we're interacting with ourselves, it really does help us relate to ourselves a lot better. And when we look at things like, at the moment, there's about 9.34 million YouTube videos of people asking the world are they ugly. You know, so if we look at that and look at the human behind all of it, look at the psychoevolution behind all of it, how the brain is operating, how the body is operating, how we're interacting with it. Then what we see technically as well through, like, in the mirror is wrong. Every photograph you see of yourself is wrong. Selfies are actually the cause of rhinoplasty jobs, like nose jobs in America at the moment, because the selfie camera blows out your nose in favor of giving you a jawline and making it, like, your ears look smaller. So all of these things are all wrong. And when we can show all of that and say, this is all wrong, this is the way technology is doing, this is what it's doing. So what we need to do is we need to change and shift our focus, start looking at ourselves. So in my talks, they cover a broad range of things, but they all tend to relate back down to self-image and self-acceptance and understanding ourselves. And I do them everywhere. I do them in schools. I'm doing them this summer again in Inside Out Camp, which is a residential camp. It's kind of an American style camp, summer camp that's based around self-image and stuff like that, and positive things like meditation and things. So it's I'm doing it at that. I do talks for corporate clients like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Hertz, eBay. You know, I've done stuff for Formula Racing. I've done stuff with L'Oreal. I've done stuff with Bank of England, Bank of Ireland. Kind of the huge, broad spectrum of clients. Everything from huge multinationals to tiny little companies and individuals just coming in. But you know, look, I'm very fortunate that I get asked to do it as well. You know, but it all kind of relates back down to that. This is the evidence. You don't look like you thought you did. And opening people up to asking those questions about how they see themselves in the world as well. Like, if you grow up in Dalkey and your parents are all doctors and solicitors, chances are you're going to follow into that academia and you're going to follow into professional life like that because it's what's laid out for you. But if you grow up in Finglas or Ballymun or in Pearse Street where I grew up and everybody's a builder or a taxi driver or some people don't work, you know, you tend to follow into that kind of monkey see, monkey do, you know. Because that's what's laid out for you, and we kind of see that as our choices in life. There's an army jeep driving past me as well, the same kind of thing. You tend to see that in certain areas of Dublin where there's a high number of people have moved into the army because it's a good option, it's a good job, pension, the whole lot, and that's a good choice for people. And that's, you see that in a lot of areas where there'll be trends towards those certain jobs. But if you want to be from Finglas or Ballymun or from Pearse Street and you want to be a professional cellist because that's what's going to lift your soul, then that's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be afraid of what people are going to say about it. And then if you're from Dalkey or Killiney and you want to be a gangster rapper, you know, or Hotier, you know, that's what you should be doing because it's the thing that's going to lift you. So your story is something that you should be telling on reflection, not something that you should be telling or it should be told before it even happens, you know. It should be something that's told at the end when you're on your deathbed at 90 odd years of age, and you should be kind of questioning the fact that you followed into something else because everybody else did it. You should be making your own story, you know. And I highly believe that. Like, we were given that opportunity because my dad, like, he worked in television and in theatre for years. We were always around creatives, and it was always like celebrated. My brother's a barrister. Like a lot of his friends stand in front of judges for very different reasons. But you know, my brother's a barrister. My sister went back to college. She had her own hair salon and stuff, and she went back to college to do digital animation. And now she's a carer, and she loves it. You know, but it's she's in a caring profession now, and it's like it suits her, and it's like what she wanted to do. And then this all came out of it seemed like a good idea at the time, and there was nobody to challenge me and tell me it was wrong. And even though we think that we're from like a working class area or anything like that, that maybe this is a bit of a, oh, people are going to make fun of me for having a creative job or for whatever. Like it was the people from my area that championed me, and it was the people from my area that asked me to photograph their kids and their pets and all that stuff at the start. And they pushed me through to kind of do bigger and better things, you know, because people believed in me when I didn't believe in myself at the start. And yeah, it kind of, my network grew from my local area into everywhere, like literally worldwide now, you know. And that's, I think once we accept the fact that everybody's going to champion us and people are just going to, they don't really care, to be honest. It's like, you know, nobody's going to ring him, but people do ring my brother. What do you think of this? I have a little bit of a legal thing with my house at the moment. But yeah, people support you in every way that they can, especially if you're from the local area. You know, no matter where you're from, you're going to be championed, unless you're Bono and people like to, yeah, oh, he's at the losing the run of himself, that fella. But no, it's that generally doesn't happen. It's a real Irish thing, you know, Catholic shame, where you put the Catholic shame onto everybody else. But no, it's yeah, that's kind of all included in the talks as well. I talk about myself, my home life. I talk about the fact that like I struggled with self-image for a long time as a teenager. I had damaged my teeth, had fallen on my face so many times. I don't know how I was still alive. But like I had a lot of things going on that almost made my life seem like a country music song. But still, here I am, and I'm still able to stand in front of people and tell them my story. I've kind of come through a lot. And yeah, it's like offering people the chance to think about themselves a little bit differently through the talks. And then usually at the end of the talks, I will have lights and a camera and I'll go, I need a victim, or I'll just pick somebody at random in the room and we bring them up and we prove to them live in front of everybody in the whole room that they don't know what they look like in the first place. And we usually do it in about 3 or 4 shots, which is crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, the whole lot is intertwined. Yeah.
Well, John, thanks so much indeed for sharing that. I like that a lot. And I want to squeeze in 2 last questions if I can before we bring this episode to a close. The first one is there anything else that I haven't touched on that you'd like to share with our worldwide audience, or maybe something that you want to double down on? And secondly, and really importantly, if people want to reach out and connect with you about your wellness talks or about the work that you do as a world leading photographer, where's the best place to send people to?
The double down thing, maybe. I don't think there's a lot that I talk about constantly over and over. You know, like there's a lot of stuff that I put out there. I don't think there's any secrets in my life, you know, but there's like this whole thing of, I'm always saying at the end of talks and stuff, like how you walk in the skin you wear is your decision. You know, why not embrace it? Because what other choice do you have? You see a lot of people that are kind of, oh, I'm getting older, I'm getting lip fillers, or they're getting hair plugs, or they're getting whatever else, hair dye and all that sort of stuff. And we're kind of taught by the world, by the commercial world, by beauty industry, that you have to follow what we do and you have to use our products in order to look beautiful and successful and whatever else. I'm not sure if this is going out before 9 o'clock at night, but that's a load of bollocks, right? It's a load of shite. It's absolute shite. Natural us is the way we're supposed to be. You know, we shouldn't, if you're in full flow of yourself and you've got good hormones running through your system and you have a big genuine reactive smile on your face, nobody cares what you look like. You know, we're not walking down the street looking at other people to try and figure out what weird thing they have going on their face they don't like in photograph. And you know, we need to understand and question the things that are out there marketing wise, but at the same time, it's just, if you're happy and confident and comfortable in your own skin, no matter what it takes, then that's the important thing. But try and do it from a natural point of view. You don't have to go and stick things into your face. You don't have to change your hair color. You don't have to wear makeup and, all that sort of rubbish. As you are, people love you as you are. We're perfect as we are to everybody else who knows us. It's only within ourselves that we find reasons that we don't like ourselves. And that's an important thing, standing in front of the mirror in the morning. And if you're going on about, oh, I'm not feeling it today, I look like a bag of hammers, I'm in bits today, if you're saying that in front of kids, that you're teaching them to do the same thing, and you're teaching them to dislike themselves and that it's okay to dislike themselves. So yeah, how you walk in the skin you wear is your decision, and why shouldn't you embrace it? Because what other choice do you have? And where people can reach me, the best place is my website, johnmurrayheadshots.com. There's links to all my social channels and stuff there, my Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I just realized they're all fine. All the buttons you click on my website pay me for various reasons. Yeah, so like everything is on my website. Like they can get in touch with me anywhere, and especially my LinkedIn. People reach out to me on LinkedIn all the time and ask me questions. And like I do this thing, LinkedIn Lattes, near the studio. My studio is next to Grafton Street. It's on South William Street in Dublin City Centre. And I meet people for LinkedIn Lattes all the time. So I pay for the coffee. We go and we don't talk about business. We don't talk about anything like that's related to anything else. It's just meet up with somebody for a coffee, and it's just to meet humans and to get people out of their head and out of the office and stuff. Networking is an awful thing, but if you just meet somebody over a coffee, it's nice. You can talk about anything. And yeah, that's it. So randomly on William Street or johnmurrayheadshots.com.
Well, look, that's great. That brings us nicely to the end of this episode. That's a great note to end on. Thanks very much to everybody who's been watching or listening to this episode around the world. Make sure that you follow, like, subscribe, do everything that I need you to do to help support this podcast. And make sure that you join me back here for some more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers. So listen, thank you, John. It's been such a pleasure to catch up with you today, and continued success with everything that you're doing.
Thanks, Simon.